he is on the phone line with me right now. Ambassador, thank you for joining in. When we talk about India-UAE ties, this has been a rock-solid relationship, especially when it comes to Gulf nations. Today's visit of Indian Prime Minister indeed is a short one, nonetheless one that aims at further deepening and strengthening of these ties. What are those areas of key focus now for India and the UAE?
Well, thank you. And of course, as you mentioned, it's a rock-solid relationship. UAE is a pivotal country for India's outreach to West Asia. And if you remember that it was the first country that Prime Minister Modi visited in West Asia once he took over in 2014. And since then, this happens to be his fifth visit. Our relationship has moved from a transactional to a comprehensive strategic partnership, which means a greater focus on defense and security dimensions of the relationship. This is the one country which has consistently helped us in fighting terrorism. This is a country that has returned all these offenders who have run away to Dubai or to UAE anywhere in a very expeditious manner. A country that is the first time provided India in the Middle East an opportunity to participate and have equity in their oil blocks. This has not happened anywhere. They are the ones who have been investing in strategic reserves. So therefore, they are very keen on India's growth story, and they want to continue. And the Pakistan sector is the one. This one country is in the Middle East, which has very openly come out against it. So I think that we have tremendous synergies today. And the Prime Minister Modi's visit, the fifth visit, which shows that Prime Minister will also be not only supporting the candidature or the hosting of the COP28 by UAE, but would also be reiterating the invitation to his friend Sheikh Zayed to come in September for the G20 summit. In addition, we also have a trilateral, which is a very important one, especially in the case of Indian Ocean and Indo-Pacific. That is with France, and Prime Minister is returning from France. That's also indicative. And I believe that is something very important because we just had a discussion among the foreign ministers and then the focal points on a course of action on this. So I think that our relationship is moving in a very high trajectory, but it always needs to be nurtured and from the highest level to the lowest level.
Right. Ambassador, when we talk about this relationship, I particularly want to ask in terms of, with the context of the ongoing war in Ukraine. We've seen several disruptions. We've seen the dependency as far as our oil or energy needs are concerned. Our dependency on Russia has increased in the last couple of years. Having said that, UAE and India also signed a historic oil agreement back in the year 2018, not to forget. It was during the pandemic that the CAPA was also signed, which was a comprehensive economic partnership agreement. How far have these agreements come, and how much has India benefited, especially when it comes to the sector of energy?
Well, I think the UAE has remained not only our third largest trading partner, but as far as the oil and gas imports are concerned, UAE happens to be the third and second. And it continues to remain there in that position and has been supporting India. As far as India's purchase of oil from Russia is concerned, that is obviously a factor of availability and the cost. Whereas most of the Gulf countries had diversified towards Europe.
Right.
And because of that, so that is not, there is something going on. But what is most important as far as UAE is concerned, apart from the supplies, is their investment in India's strategic reserves. So that is a very important area in which we are. Plus, they are investing in the big refineries. They are committed along with the Saudis and other refinery. We are looking at $40 billion worth of investment. They have committed about $75 billion. So energy security is very much part of it. But now they're looking at the food security also, which you mentioned are the exact direct, impact of the Russia-Ukraine war. And food security, under the I2U2 context, they are investing about $2 billion in food corridors in India. So for them, food security is very, very important. So I think that this is a multi-dimensional relationship that is moving in a very fast-paced manner across the spectrum. So that is a very important thing, and I trust between the two leaders is extremely important to encash upon it.
Absolutely. And, what makes this year or this meeting in the year 2023 even more special is the fact that both the countries are playing a globally significant role, whether it is UAE's presidency of the COP28 or India's presidency of the G20. There is much that both countries are contributing globally. And as you earlier also mentioned, the UAE also happens to be a special invitee to the G20 this year.
Yes, very much so. I mean, there are three countries from the West Asian region that India has invited. Saudi Arabia is already part of G20. India has invited UAE, and India has invited Oman and Egypt, as you know, and Prime Minister was in Egypt recently.
Yes.
So that shows that India is taking a very holistic and a strategic approach to the region as well, while developing its ties and essentially leveraging all the strengths of its partners, both in the Indo-Pacific as well as in West Asia and maritime security, so to say. I mean, so apart from that, it was mentioned by Abhishek before that we have about 3.5 million Indians there, and this is the only country where the Indians have continued to grow. In fact, we used to have the largest number in Saudi Arabia at one time, but now it is the United Arab Emirates which has been actually inviting, and they really like the Indian workforce, whose complex has also changed from the blue workers to the white workers, the more skilled ones.
Absolutely. It's interesting that you talk about Indian workers and Indian communities. Do take us through the kind of connect that Prime Minister Modi has when it comes to the Indian diaspora wherever he goes, something which we just witnessed not just in France but in the United States and not to forget Egypt. And today he's making this outreach to UAE, which also happens to be one which happens to have the Indian community as their largest ethnic community.
Well, as you know, the Prime Minister has always been meeting, and that's the most important, because diaspora diplomacy has become an integral part of India's foreign policy today. And so therefore, wherever he goes, because this diaspora is frankly the living bridge between India and that country, and very often they are called as ambassadors of India, and they also feel connected because it's a growing India today. Everybody is talking about India becoming a real pivot of the story. And therefore, I believe that talking to our Indians, they feel comfortable and they connect with Mr. Modi and the way to do it. For example, now when he was in France, you know, something very interesting that was done for the people. Not only that we agreed to do the UPI, which is also with the UAE, but the fact that after doing their post-graduation, the Indian students there can work for 5 years in that country, which is an amazing achievement, which is no other country we have that kind of flexibility. So these are the kind of things that Prime Minister has been doing for the diaspora in those countries, while they continue to remain contributors to those countries' economy, which are the adopted countries. But at the same time, India keeps on doing whatever it can. And they are, in turn, helping India also, not only through remittances, but through technology transfer. I remember when I was in the U.S., a large number of financial companies and the IT companies who came into India, they really brought India's profile into a very different orbit altogether.
Ambassador, in fact,